Hello everyone, I hope you're well. Do you fancy having just a little play? I've just come back home, so it's Thursday night, it's dark, it's windy, there's a storm brewing and it's cold, so I've just put a little bit of heating on. And I thought, I've just come back in because I went to the post office and waited in a queue, and I thought, shall we just have a play, just for the sake of having a play. Now the only things I've got that are cut on my desk are pieces of pink frog smooth card, 4 inches by 6 inches, excuse me, and I've got a couple of those. So it's pink frog 300 GSM. Use whichever card you prefer. Let me just move these out of the way so we might have some space. No idea what I'm making. I've just quickly picked up some stuff, so no idea. So we'll take our 4 by 6 inch card. So you could have this as a snippet if you want, but obviously I'm just going to have a plate, not a snippet. So first of all, because I'm going to do a little bit of embossing, I think, let's just use our anti-static bag, just because I don't know how many times I've handled this card, because it was in my drawer, so it could have been handled 1,000 times, so just to be safe. I haven't got the sticky ink pad out because I'm a drip. There's always something I need, especially if I'm doing something off the cuff. Honestly, it's a good job I'm doing it off the cuff in my craft room because I don't get everything out. So I'm going to use my Versamark watermark stamp pad. I love this one. I've had it years. You know, they last me ages. I always buy a new one now and then, but you can see that's not new. But they're a brilliant ink pad because you don't end up with patchy results. They give a good result. So I'm going to use my October release, 1007. It's Acer Officer. So let's use this stamp. And we're just going to give this an inking all over the stamp. Now, it doesn't matter whether you're using VersaFine Clair or whether you're using a sticky ink pad. The same applies. You need to make sure that you go over that stamp a few times to apply that sticky ink. It's like anything. I mean, this is an A6 background stamp and it's the whole stamp. So it's quite a reasonable size stamp. So let's just make sure that we don't rush. At the end of the day, this is my playtime with you, and just to spend some time with you, catching up, and just let's have a play, you know, for no other reason. If it goes wrong, it goes wrong. It doesn't matter. If I don't create anything, it doesn't matter. It's just about spending some creative time together, and let's see where it takes us. You can put this on an acrylic block if you wish. I'm just going to use it as is because I didn't get it off the acrylic block and I've applied the ink now, so hard cheese. So just place my stamp on here. Now, when you use an good grief, I didn't say that I would have been able to get my words out. When you use an acrylic block, it prevents you from pressing too hard and squishing. Do you like the sound effects? Squishing the stamp too much. That's the advantage of using an acrylic block. When you do it this way, you are prone to pressing a little too hard when you don't need to. All it wants is even pressure just all over the stamp. It doesn't need to have too much pressure. And look how much you can see. You can see loads on there, can't you? That's an interesting picture. So we'll just grab a piece of copier paper. One advantage of having a small craft room, I can just keep reaching over everywhere. It's great. Right. Move these out of the way. And let's just sprinkle that with some white embossing powder. And then we might see what we've got. So just sprinkle that and just make sure it goes all over the card. There we go. Give that a little tap, just so you get the excess off, which should come off quite easily because I've used an anti-static bag, and you can see that. Lovely, just lovely. And then my hands are a bit cold, so we could end up with this embossing powder all over the place. And it's good for the camera when I put the white piece of paper up there. There's no way it can focus. Right. So there's a bit of excess there. That'll just go over my pyjamas. There you go, straight over my pyjamas. Right. Because when you come home, it's the law that you have to put your pyjamas on. So I have my pyjamas on. And just everything else comes off and pyjamas on. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to heat that heat tool up. There's no point me taking the heat tool and applying the heat to this when it's freezing cold. It just won't do anything. Now, if you wanted to make the edges more random, what you can do is you can get your little brush. I like it as it is. Or if, say, you didn't want it so you'd got straight lines, you could take a brush and just take away that embossing powder, and then you'd have a more random edge if that's something that you like. So I'm going to heat the card. So this is white embossing powder, and I like to use an anti-static bag because it gives you a nice clean finish. You don't get stray blobs of embossing powder, so it works quite nicely. I also like to lift the card if I can, just away from the non-stick craft sheet, because if I leave it down on the non-stick craft sheet, all I'm doing is trying to heat the card and the non-stick craft sheet. Spit it out, Tracy. So I'm just holding it a little closer to the heat tool by lifting it up just so that that turns a little bit quicker. Not that I'm in a rush anyway. There's no rush at all. This is just a little bit of playtime. And I have to say, you must know by now, I adore a good background stamp because it's the basis for your focal imagery. And sometimes a background stamp can work standalone, or it just adds a little bit more je ne sais quoi to your project. So let's just heat that. And there's bound to be a little bit I miss, because there always is, because that's what I do. But once you've heated an area, don't stay on that area. Move your heat tool, because you'll just overheat something and then it goes back to being matte and you don't have that glossy type finish. A little bit there I've missed. And here. And you instantly, once you've done the whole card, you can instantly see where you've missed, because it's very dull looking. So let's just tilt that. So it's very easy to see where you may have missed. Just seeing that go there. There we go. Just a little bit there. That's it. So you can quite easily see where you've missed. Now, if you were going to go over with ink pads, which I've done before, you need to make sure that's cool. You don't want to sort of place your ink pads onto a hot surface, because you're just going to dry your ink pad out. So I'm not going to use an ink pad, so it doesn't matter. So I don't know why I'm going to try and waft it, but it doesn't matter. So I've got that on there, and what I'm going to do is take my spritzer bottle. Let's just put a little bit of kitchen roll under here. Let's place a piece of kitchen roll under there, like so. And then I'm just going to spritz this card with water. And then I'm going to use some infusions. Now, you can use any crystals that you wish that react with moisture. It's entirely up to you. You can use any that you prefer, whatever your preferred choice is. Now, the infusions have got walnut crystals in as well. So the more you leave them on there, those walnut crystals become more visible. So I'm going to spritz again with water, and this time spritz with a bit more. Now that was magenta. So I'm going to add a little bit of blackcurrant. So just a little bit of blackcurrant. And I will tell you that I'm hopeless in adding just a little bit. It's not really my forte, just a little bit. And you can leave it on there to dry if you wish, doing its own thing. You can, so we've had magenta. What's this one is? Are You Cerise? So let's add a little bit of the cerise. And then just add a little bit more water. Now, if I want to create another background, so I can leave that on there just to absorb and dry or whatever. But if I want to create another background, let's see what happens when we place another piece of card on the top. So now I've got two backgrounds, as you can see. So I can tip this off, just dip it onto the card there. I've got this kitchen roll underneath, so that'll take the majority. You can also make another background as well if you wish. So I'm just going to dry the card a little bit, and I put kitchen roll underneath just so that I can capture any over excessive moisture. But I'm going to take, I've just dried that one off a little bit. So don't forget, we're just having a little play. So look at the ink on there. There's still plenty of ink on there. So rather than waste it, let's grab another piece of 4x6 inch card. Rather than waste that, let's take another piece. And we can create another background. There you go. Just dab up the ink from your background, just any excess ink just from your background, because you can create another background. You can use this piece where you've got extra background on there that I've just dried. You can use that piece as well. There we go. We've got some nice backgrounds here. Now, what you need to do is, if you're going to dry this, you can't dry it too much because you'll affect the embossing, and you don't want to do that. So I can do a little waft. I can turn it over like so, and then move it out of the way. So I can dry these, no problem at all. Dry those, no problem at all. So I've got then some nice backgrounds I can use for another project. I'm just going to use the one that I've done the embossing on, but there's no point wasting these backgrounds, is there? We may as well create several backgrounds. And if you let these dry naturally, they won't bend. They'll just dry naturally, and they'll dry flat. So let's just, you see, now I've used that kitchen roll, I've got nothing to wipe up, which is wonderful. And I know some of you don't like mess, and I'm aware of that. So if you want to just keep it a little bit tidy, you can do that. So let's just give this a little bit of a dry. Don't over dry it. Just bend that a little bit, and let's just take a little clean area of kitchen roll, just a little bit of moisture on that kitchen roll, and we're just going to wipe over our embossed area. Just wipe over that area so it just removes any excess ink. Then I'll just get another clean area, and then let's just give that embossing a little bit of a dust. This is as much dusting as I'm doing today, or polishing. We're polishing, not dusting, polishing. So that just gives, I mean, that on its own, you could create a sentiment, nothing else, and it'd be perfect to send somebody just a note. It's lovely. And what you've got are two backgrounds that I can use for another project, which will work beautifully. So just gorgeous. So what I'm thinking then, what can I do? See, the other thing on my desk is this circular template. This is about 2¼ inches across. So I think I'm going to use that circle. So let's find a piece of white card. And this is purely off the cuff and self-indulgent because I'm just playing. So I'm going to take the circle, and sometimes when I draw around these circles, it's terrible, like that is. But if you've got a die, then you can use a die and cut out a perfect circle. So I'm going to cut the circle out. The circle was originally cut out with an old circular die. I haven't bought a new one for about 20 years. I really should perhaps invest in some new circular dies. But you can draw around a lid. You don't have to have a die. You can draw around a lid quite easily. Let's just cut around here. Now I'm going to distress the edge of this circle. Now you have to remember there are distressing tools that are designed for distressing edges. I'm using scissors. I'm well aware that scissors are sharp, so I just have to give out a warning to say please be careful when you're using scissors. As a demonstrator, that's my responsibility, so there you go. Please don't go and cut your fingers. If you don't want to use scissors, use a nail file and just distress the edges. Not everybody's got a distressing tool, and we still want to show you how to create the project. I had a distressing tool, no idea where it is. I've had that many declutters, nothing surprises me. So I've got my circular piece now, and then what I'm going to do is just ink an area with VersaFine Clair Nocturne ink, just to give me a contrast. And I'm inking way more than I need because, well, it's just easier to ink more than you need. Let's take this copy of paper and use the other side that we didn't put the embossing powder on. And then I'm just going to place this down. Don't think about it too much because you'll get, I may have got that upside down, but it doesn't matter. I'll just turn the circle around. It's not a problem. But just lightly press, just even pressure. Don't press down really too hard if you're not using, if like me, you're not using an acrylic block. So just be aware of that. I can't even see where the edges of the circle are anymore. There we go. Turn that round. And what we'll have now is something as a contrast before I add a focal image. But if you stamped around this like this, then stamped this stamp, say you got this on a piece of card and you stamp this over the top, you'd then have that circular aperture here that you could create another card. So might even do that, you see. What I find is when I'm creating, there are always ways to develop another idea, and that's why I like creating. So just bend this a little bit. Let's move that stamp out of the way. There we go. And I'm just bending that card. I'm showing the card who's boss. And then what I can do is we can add this here before we add our focal imagery, just as a contrast against the background, so it works quite nicely then against the background. So then I've got A for Acer, so I could use this leaf, and what I want to do then is just play around a little bit, so with colours. So let's grab, what colours have I got? If I'm unsure what colour something is, test it against there, because I definitely don't want that. It needs to be more pinky. What colours have I got out? I've got, it's typical, isn't it? The colours, I've got so many things on one side. So we could have the pink, a little bit of the red, and show a little bit of yellow. I don't know whether I'll add the purple yet. I mean, I talk as if this leaf's about 6 foot high, the amount of colours I'm going to add onto it. So let's grab another piece of card. So I've got another scrap of card that's absolutely huge. So let's just rip that in half so it makes it a little bit easier to handle. And sometimes always practice on a piece of scrap card. And then if the colour isn't quite right for you, don't worry. Do it again. It doesn't have to be perfect. So I've added mustard seed. Let's add some picked raspberry. So we'll add some of that picked raspberry, which will turn to some orange tones as well. Let's add some of the lumberjack plaid. And then let's see what it looks like if we add a little bit of seedless preserves. Just a little bit of the seedless preserves, not too much. And let's have a look what we've got. Again, you can add this to your acrylic blocks. Let's have a look. And these are perfect for ATC size. So if you wanted to create a little ATC and you just wanted to do something nice and simple, or even if you wanted to add the ATC to a card, it works quite nicely. Beautiful colours. Just works quite nicely. So you can see the colours there. So what you want to do, I mean, I could spritz that and get a second generation, but at the moment I'm just playing. So I'm going to take the stamp, and you would spritz that and take off the excess ink. But what I'm going to do is small. Let's try some VersaFine Clair. So I've got my, this is why you should always experiment with colours. It's rare that I get exactly what I want from the first print. I mean, that is beautiful, but it's rare that I get exactly what I want. So I'm going to use Tulip Red VersaFine Clair, which to be honest is more like an orange, but let's see. What is glamorous then? Is that a pink? You see, this is what I do half my time. So if you're ever unsure, let's just... what kind of colour is that? So what colour are you? Is that supposed to be red? Let's have a look what it looks like. Shut up, Tracy, waffling, and just stamp the thing. So I've got the Tulip Red and a little bit of Purple Delight. And let's just see what it looks like. I'm never sure. I've just wiped my finger all over the stamp. Now this is VersaFine Clair, which is a permanent ink. The oxides aren't permanent. So let me just, you see, still not right, but let me show you what we're talking about. So when I say the oxides are reactive, if I spritz the oxides with water, you can see they're going to react with the water. If I spritz the permanent ink, it does nothing. It just stays where it is. This is what we mean when we say it's reactive to water. So I don't want any of them. So I'll grab another piece of card. Don't just instantly say, you know, give up because something has not worked for you. So I'm going to take the Purple Delight on its own and see what that looks like. So let's have a look at the Purple Delight and see what that looks like on its own. So we'll just take that. So this is the purple, which is obviously it's Purple Delight. That's why it says Purple Delight. Where's the one that is pink? It's remembering that there it is. Charming pink. That's what I meant. I didn't mean glamorous that I wanted. And this is why you need to test your colours. Let's leave that out. So that was Purple Delight. Let's try Charming Pink. So we'll try the Charming Pink, like so. So now, when I look at this, I've got something that will work with this. You could use the purple as well, but it works quite nicely. And there's a little bit of purple on this as well, which works quite nicely. So now, I don't want that one. Let's take the pink, which is the Charming Pink VersaFine Clair. So I'll take that Charming Pink, which is the lightest of the two, and then we'll use the Purple Delight and just add a few touches of the Purple Delight. And we'll just use those. So just take your time when you're playing, just literally have a play. And that works quite nicely with a little touch of the purple. So what I'm going to do is we're going to cut those out. So I always like to cut whatever I'm cutting out smaller so that there's less surrounding card and I'm not faffing with too much card. Unlike I'm doing now, faffing to find the scissors. And you know you've created, you see I've created that many projects today. I do wonder about myself at times. What I've done is I've put the kitchen roll on top of my scissors. Welcome to Tracy's world. So let's take our acer. And we just cut the acer out. And I'm going to leave a little white border. And I always think, you know, if somebody bought me one of these little A7 stamps as a Christmas present, I'd be absolutely chuffed to bits. It's just, they work so beautifully. Even an A7 stamp set. Because you could have this A7 stamp set and stamp this in the background and do what we did. Absolutely no problem at all. Let's just go round. There we go. And just, I like to add a little bit of dimension. You don't have to add any dimension if you don't wish. Also, I love cutting out things so that I can sort of play around with composition. So let's just add this. And this is my time just to play. So I'm just going to scrunch those leaves up. But now, if I place this against here, like so, it gives me a contrast in that it doesn't, if I put it straight on the background, it's just going to get lost. But with placing this on there, it just lifts that so that that doesn't get lost. So let's add the purple one, like so. And I think sometimes, for me, it's good to just come along and play with no plan in mind, because sometimes it makes you use a different colour palette than you would normally. Even if you say, well, I don't like greens, or I don't like purples, or I don't like... I know that you may not like them, and sometimes it's best to use your favourite colours, then you always think you might produce the best. But sometimes, just come and play and use a colour that you wouldn't necessarily use on a day-to-day basis. You might be pleasantly surprised at what you achieve. So let's just cut this out. There we go. That's it. You can even sort of scrunch the leaf up a bit, because I've used a permanent ink pad, so it won't sort of move, just so it's not quite as stiff. And what I mean by that is, you know, it's not like this. It's got a little bit of movement to it, so we just add that. So what I'm going to do, just to diffuse some of the background, so we'll just diffuse a little bit of the background. So what we can do is we can take this piece off here, and we can always get this piece how we want it first. So I will take some black cotton, and we're going to add that to the background. But let's grab that Purple Delight, and let's just add some of the Purple Delight just around the edges. And when we've added it around the edges, just smudge it a little bit. Just smudge the edge, just so that it comes into the card. So go around and around and around, and then take and just smudge in some of the edge. And if it isn't wet enough, add a little bit more ink and just smudge the ink into the background. Let's add a little bit more here, just so it looks like it's bleeding into the background. There we go. Just to add a little bit of the purple. And yes, you'll have a little bit on your finger, but it soon comes off with a bit of a wipe. Lovely, lovely. So what I'm going to do is I can get this little composition right first. So I can use the circle. I can add my leaves. I'm using Pinflair glue. And I can just add my composition and get this composition of the circle and the leaves right first. Just sort of faff around. Let's have that down there. And just give it a little bit of life. So with the Pinflair, I've given it a little bit of dimension. So let me show you. So I've just got a little bit of dimension on there, just to give it a little bit of lift. And then I can add this to here. Now, to diffuse the background a little bit, I'm going to use some black cotton. And I'm pulling out really long lengths just before I actually sort of break the cotton. And don't use polyester cotton like Tracy did once and nearly take your fingers off. So I'm just going to add that black cotton. And again, this black cotton just gives some contrast to the design, and faff a little bit just so that you've got pieces here and there. I'm then going to take some more of that Pinflair and just add a few dollops of the Pinflair. And you want to capture some of that cotton behind the circle so that you hold that in place. So you do want to give it a little press, just so that it definitely makes contact with the cotton. The cotton just diffuses the background just a little bit. Just lovely, just diffuses that a little bit. So let's take our, that's it, Pinflair. And let's grab another piece of card and then take our black ink. Which bit do I want? Let's take the circles. I'm using my Nocturne, no, I'm not using my Nocturne ink. I'm talking a load of rubbish because I picked the wrong ink pad up. So I'm going to use my black Nocturne ink, and the reason I'm using the black Nocturne ink is, you know how I created this circle here in black to give me contrast? This will give me contrast as well in the foreground and echo the circle that I've got in that background. So the circle I've got here, this circle will just echo that. So we just cut around the circle like so, and it just gives a little bit of contrast, which is just what we need. There we go. So that'll just give another circular bit. And if you look at that circular piece, you've also got a tiny bit of the leaf, which works beautiful. And what I want you to do is play around. So I love that there. So let's just use my adhesive, which I haven't got. So let's take the adhesive. I'm using my tonic adhesive, and I need the adhesive at the bottom. Now, because I'm adhering it on the circle, it's going to have dimension and lift anyway, because it's on this layer. So just add that little bit there, and it already looks like it's raised because it's on the circle, just so that you can see that. Just gives it some contrast, and I love the fact it's just got that little bit of leaf in, but it's actually part of your stamp. It's actually part of, let's lift the stamp up, it makes it far easier. It's actually part of this stamp, which I absolutely love. I'm then going to use this circle here, again with my black ink. So now what you're creating is a composition, and it works really nicely. And this is why I love a little bit of a faff. I also love time to just play. So let's cut out that circle. And we will add this card to a black mat, which will echo the black circular piece, the black stamping, and it will make everything pop. There we go. So I've now got this circular piece that we have our numbers on, and let's hang on the top. So I'm just sticking the adhesive on the top, like so. There we go. Once it grabs, that's it. So I'm just going to what? Where's everything gone? Where's my... I hope you just lose as many packaging and stamps as I do. I absolutely drive myself potty. What have I done with the A7 little stamp sheet? A6. So I've got the acetate. No idea where the other one has gone, the packaging, but we'll worry about that later. So we've used our stamp set 1006, A for Acer. We've used our It's Acer Officer 1007, and then going to bring in one of my florals. I'm going to use Miracle Growth. I'm going to take Miracle Growth. Let's take our little floral. Don't think any of these scraps of card are any use whatsoever. Just place that on there. I love mixing and matching little bits and pieces. So another piece of scrap card. And sometimes it's not until you just place everything together when it all comes together you realise. So let's take the floral, and this doesn't need much stamping. Sometimes I go for say that and I think, you watch, I won't be able to stamp it properly now. But it doesn't take much stamping. Let's move that out of the way. Let's cut this down. There we go. So much stuff everywhere. So we're just going to cut this flower out. And there's no prep done because I just came upstairs and thought, let's just have a chin wag together and have a little play. So I'm going to cut round my petals, and I'm using Pergamano scissors. You could use nail scissors, or if you're one of those ladies or gentlemen that can use your big scissors and still work quite with little details like this, then perfect. I'm hopeless with big scissors when it comes to fussy cutting, but that's me all over. So just go around, and I'm just leaving a white space because it works rather nicely with this floral. It works beautifully with this floral. Really does work nicely. Let's just cut. And with the petals being quite thin, it works nicely with leaving that white border. And then when it just gets to this bit, I just sort of twiddle so that it's not perfectly straight. That's too much. That's better. And again, this will just lift the whole design. But sort of don't disregard a colour scheme, because maybe just for a one-off, it makes a nice change. There we go. And this is why I love stamps so much. They don't date. No, I just think that these stamps, you can use them year after year after year. They work really well. In fact, I do use them year after year after year. And I'm turning my card rather than turning the scissors. There we go. Trim that a little bit, and then it all looks bent like this, so I just fold it down like that, because I'm going to add a little bit of contrast with the floral. So we'll take a little bit of pin flare. I'm not colouring the floral because I'm bringing some of this white area to the foreground. So let's just add you there. That's it. Let's just push this glue up because I don't want to waste any of it. And then, where are you? I've got so many of my washes now. Just trying to think which ones I want to use. So I'm going to use, let's have a look. I keep my washes in these little sort of, they're actually from a fridge, but they just work quite nicely. So I've got my washi hash 44 around. I'm just going to use a little bit of washi, and I've got some little bit left over here. I told you I never bin it. I'm terrible. I always keep the washi just in case. I just want a little tiny bit. So let's add that here. And I've faffed for ages, even with washi, just so that you can see this. So on the around washi, hash 44, we've got the seeds of hope. What else do I want to do? And I'm just pausing because I'm just taking my time just to see if there's anything else I want to use. This has got so many words on there. So let's, and you don't have to worry about picking out a whole word. The idea is you can use it as a whole as well. So don't get too hung up about just using one word. You can use the whole. I'm going to add a little bit of washi here, just again to add balance and break up my background, and you can see the colour through the washi, just lovely. So I'll place that back in my container. Now just bear with me. So I'm going to add some white splatters. Now with your pens, if you're using a Posca pen, there's no point trying to splatter this unless, one, you've given your pen a really good shake, which I normally do before I start the video, and you need to pump that pen so that you've got the paint coming out. Can you see the shine there? You need to make sure it's coming out. And then you can give your project a nice good splatter. Turn your project around so that you hit a different area on your card, and it splatters nice and easily. It just splatters beautifully. And what you don't do, which Tracy doesn't, is you don't try to stick the card, which I always do. I try to stick the card down when nothing is dry. So what you're doing is you're making it difficult for yourself, but that's what I do all the time anyway. So we'll place this, let's place that cotton. We'll place this onto a black mat. So let's take the black mat. There we go. Now, if I ever want to go into my safe place, and what I mean by that is create something that is safe, as in I don't try a new colour, I try colours that, you know, I'm always drawn to. So in my projects like blues and greens, I was determined not to do blues and greens because I'm very drawn. Don't go and try to press when you've got your Posca paint pen. Then pick your card up and you need to sort of entice it to adhere to that background piece because it's a little bit, you know, you've had moisture on there. I'm certainly not going to iron card. I don't want to iron clothes, so I'm certainly not going to iron card flat. What you can do is if you let it dry naturally, your card will curl less. So just make sure that that is going to stick down. And then I'm going to add that to a 5 by 7 inch card blank. So let's add that to a 5 by 7 inch card blank. But you make it far easier on yourself if you try not to adhere when everything is soaking wet. So we place that there, like so. And then I always pick it up because I sort of take a glance at the card just to make sure it looks straight. So then if we lift this card up, that hasn't stuck down because we've got the cotton underneath. So you've got the seeds of hope from the washi. You've got your background and then your washi there again. And it just looks beautiful. And then just to finish off, I would, when everything's dry, just go into the floral and just add a few little white dots just to lift that a little bit. And that is your card done. So I hope you enjoyed our little off-the-cuff session. I really enjoyed that, just to spend some time with you. So love to all, and I'll see you all soon. Bye for now.